I said that's acceptable.
Okay.
Okay, on we go. We are just at the last part of Daf Zayin Omid Aleph. If you remember, do you remember the machlokas in the Mishnah? The end of the Mishnah, it was talking about what is considered cruel. Perhaps is a wrong word because he used the words chabolah here. If you notice, I'm just doing the Mishnah, the last part of the Mishnah. It actually looks like it's halfway through the Mishnah on Daf Zayin Omid Aleph, where it tells us that Sanhedrin hahureges echod b'shavua. If it's once in 7 years, nikros choivlonis. Chabolah is normally, it's not cruel really, destructive maybe. Chabolah, chovel. Chovel is...
So it was, nowadays we call a terrorist, Mechabel.
Mechabel, yes.
Chablan.
Chablan, yeah, no, that's the same type of thing.
The Torah says there's sachbo, doesn't it? There's sachbo.
Yeah. We talk about, there's loads of mishnayos about chabolah and chovel b'chaveiro. In fact, there's a perek, a chovel b'chaveiro, someone who does almost like hits him. But it's not cruel, destroying chabolah.
In my text, it translates it as a destructive tribute.
Destructive, fair enough, yeah. Yeah, that was one of the words we mentioned. Yeah, no, that's good. So, yeah, it's Nikras Chavlonis, according to this, if it's once in 7 years. In other words, this should be a rare event. And if you remember, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Echod l'shivim shomna, once in 70 years. We'll come to that in a minute. And the final view, Rabbi Taf and Rabbi Akiva, if we would have been on the Sanhedrin, meaning where they were actually judging capital offenses, because he was actually on the Sanhedrin, as we saw last week. So he's saying, Rabbi Tafan and Rabbi Akiva, we would never have allowed it to happen. We would always avoid it actually carrying out the death penalty. And then if you remember, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, well, no, you can't, you certainly can't come up with a statement like that. That is increasing the amount of capital offenses because they know shofchei damim in particular, talking about murder, because people know that there's no way they're going to carry out the death penalty. But no, it's the principle here that it's got to be considered extremely carefully. Let's have a look. If so, the first two views, once in 7 years, is called destructive. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says once in 70 years. Have a look, please, at the Gemara. 1, 2, 3 narrow lines up in Zayin Omid Aleph. Sanhedrin hahureges v'chulu. Do you have that?
Yeah.
Iboi lahu, they asked them, which means one yeshiva, one group would have asked another. They asked them. What is he saying? This view is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Is he saying that once in 70 years, even that is considered destructive? Oy Dilma, or perhaps Oirach Arahu. That's normal, that's okay. Do you understand the point here? So you've got the first view, once in 7 years, that is really over the top. That's far too much. And well, let's say in normal circumstances. And then Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says once in 70 years. Is he saying the same rule of the Tana Kama, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is saying applies to 70 years? That's also considered a destructive Bezdin? Or is he saying, no, because you can see in the words of the Mishnah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, maybe means, no, once in 70 years, that's an acceptable amount. And the Gemara says teku. It's not teku, which means it stands, or it stands for Tishbi Yitaritz Kushim. We look forward in the future, where we have people of stature will be able to answer. Particularly, we're talking about this man of Mashiach, where people will be able to answer exactly what that meant. We could talk about with Tchias HaMesim, where he'll say for himself what he felt. But it's unclear what their view is. That's a teku. That remains unclarified. But as it happens, we do paskin like the Tanakama. Well, I'll say paskin. We just say once in 7 years that is considered, and we don't. And the Rambam doesn't actually mention a number. So he is saying that for sure, once in 77 years, that is considered destructive in the normals. But the Rambam does actually go on and say, however, if it turns out it's necessary and you've done all the, you say due diligence, but it's much more than that. You've really looked into this with extreme care, and you do find that the individual is chayiv misa, a murder. It's absolutely clear, and you've got the witnesses, and it's all lined up. Absolute. Then there's no reason why you shouldn't carry out that death penalty. It only means that would normally you'd be looking for ways to at least not have the death penalty carrying out. That is the views we've got there. And then we got the final piece of Gemara. Now, Rabbi Tarf and Rabbi Akiva, if we would have been in the Bezdin, officiating, acting as the Dayanim, then we would never have allowed it to happen. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? What can you do to avoid it? Look what the Gemara says. First wide line. Says the Gemara, Heichi Havi Ovdi. Heichi means how. How would they have done? What would they have done to avoid it? I mean, if you've got a case, let's say it's a murder, and it's as clear as you can imagine with the witnesses, what could you do to avoid it? Now, I'm saying this, but we don't actually paskin like that, as we've seen. The Rambam would say that no, you do have to carry it out if necessary. But according to this last view, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon, how would they avoid it? How can you avoid it? I mean, you can't just overlook if you've got witnesses and it seems to be spot on. This was, it was in full knowledge. Have a look at the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Loza. Both Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Loza, 4 lines up from the end of the perek. The Omri Travayu, they both say, Re'isem Trefa, Horag, or Sholem Horag. Laurie, last 4 lines of the Gemara before we get to the end of the perek. So we're saying, what type of questioning could have been done by Rab Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva to ensure that they won't carry out the death penalty? Well, we're talking here about a murder. What could you do? I mean, if it's as clear as possible and the witnesses and they're checked, no, they would have asked the following question, because there you will see what this means. They would have asked, the person that was killed, was he a trefa or a sholim? In other words, did you check the internal organs to ensure that person was not someone who had some illness and would have died anyway? As we know, if a person kills a trefa, they are not chayiv misa. And what the definition of a trefa is normally someone under normal circumstances, al-pi teva, would not have survived a year. They are considered a trefa. Now, of course, we know even the doctors can get things wrong, so one can never tell. But sometimes, if one can, al-pi teva, there's no way this individual is going to survive. He has the illness inside, maybe one of the limbs, internal organs. There's no way that he's going to live. So they can ask that question. Are you certain that individual, all his internal organs were functioning perfectly? Are you certain about that? Now, that's a pretty tricky one. I mean, without actually going and you know, shall say, looking into the internal organs. There's no way you can find that out, and that normally that would not be done. So that would be a way of quizzing these Eidim, and then there is a bit of a let out. Now, Tosfos is concerned about this. Tosfos asks, but no, we don't normally follow. I mean, if someone is healthy, you don't have to, do an internal examination to find out whether the person's a treifa. Mervyn putting his hand up. Is the doctor's question coming in here?
Yeah, no, well, it's Apologist question, Quincy. No, I'm just. What's the practical implications of diagnosing a person as a treifa?
I beg your pardon,
what's the practical implications of halachic if somebody's diagnosed, the human's diagnosed as a treifa? I mean,
the random rule would be that actually, if he really is diagnosed as a treifa, then someone who kills him, of course, it's also to kill him, but it would not be a capital offence.
But apart from this, what we're talking about now, there's no other.
No, not really. No, not really. There's no reason why the doctors shouldn't be trying as hard as they can, even with a treifa. Absolutely, so that doesn't stop. But as I say, the only difference would be it's still osa to kill an individual like that. Osa, there would be an ism in our Torah, but he wouldn't be hired the death penalty for killing him. But and that's a question. Sorry.
It's interesting this category was made, especially as
it's not really meant for humans. It's the real point of a treifa, of course, we talk about animals being kosher or not. If you've done shechita on an animal, a chicken, and you find it's a treifa, then that's exactly what you call about a treifa. Their rules. And of course, there's a huge amount on the subject. If it's treifa, it can't be eaten. It's also to eat.
But I mean, it's interesting because I think in connection with end of life, I mean, they're not allowed to hasten.
No.
About the haste, because even if somebody sees somebody's falling out the window, falling out, and you shoot them on the way down, for instance, there's a field in that because
absolutely, they are not a treifa yet.
Changed it by a tenth of a second. They're not.
It wouldn't pick. Then you talk about end of life. That would be. There could actually be no. You've touched on a good point here. There are occasions where if it is a treifa, would you be resuscitating? That's a very delicate area, but you're right. There would be ramifications. Someone who is in that situation, would you be resuscitating? If the doctors say there's no hope, should you or shouldn't you? That really is a very tough question. But that would come into it. This treifa idea. Yeah, go, Laurie. Yeah.
I mean, there's no such similar principle in English law at all. I mean, if you kill someone that's got terminal cancer, it makes no difference. Murder is murder.
Absolutely. The same in say Jewish law. The only difference is you wouldn't carry out the death penalty. That's all.
Yes, but the sentence wouldn't, in English, or as I understand it, the sentence wouldn't be mitigated by, let's say, the age of the person you murder, or whether they're infirm or not. It would simply be whatever the is.
In the days when they were carrying out death penalty, would that have made a difference then?
I'm not sure it would. I'm not a lawyer, but it's a very strange one, this, isn't it? So if you kill someone that's infirm, you've got a lesser sentence, or you avoid the death penalty. Doesn't seem very just, does it really?
Well, they are considered. They are considered a treifa.
Yes.
It's only for the death penalty. That's all.
That doesn't mean somebody who's infirm. It means somebody who's going to die.
I'm infirm. That's fine. We're talking here someone who
is going to die within 12 months. I understand that.
Going and not just going. Yeah, I mean, you go with one of the limbs, and you have to say the doctors really have. There's no way relying on a miracle, and that's of course the doctors can continue working and doing what they can. Of course they can.
I suppose the principle here is that if a person is destined to die, then the fact that you kill them in a more global picture is that you've accelerated death what otherwise would be taking place. And I can understand that, I suppose.
Yeah.
But from an external perspective, it doesn't.
Oh no, it will be the same. It will be, as I say, as forbidden. The actual issa is makes no difference. It's only as far as carrying out the death penalty that would not apply. That's all. You'd have to deal. You would deal with a person, as we know, a moment of life worth everything. Say infinite, as we say. So yeah, there's no difference there, and he's got to be treated in the same way. You see that very much. I mean, I shouldn't say in England, but in Israel in particular, the care that they give the elderly here in hospital is incredible. It really is. You can see exactly that carried out, where even the infirm or more than the infirm, where people are in that category of the treifa, still an extra moment, an extra, keep that person going, and really as much as possible. They, as you said, and that is something that's very beautiful. You do see that here. But it's just on this one point. So back to the point we're raising here. Tosfos's conclusion is that it's just ways we're going to be asking questions. You see, normally, if there would have been this murder, you're not going to check the organs to see whether the person was a treifa or not. And that's Tosfos's question. We do normally go according to the majority. There's a rule of bossa rove. We follow majority, and therefore that's not an examination you'd have to carry out. And Tosfos's view is we're just trying to bamboozle, if you like. What we're trying to do, according to Rab Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, is keep asking lots of questions until they contradict each other. Once the Eidim have contradicted each other, that's it. You cannot then carry out the death penalty because the witnesses aren't quite sure what's going on. So it's a way of trying to get them, as I say, to this contradiction, which will just mean we're not going to carry out that death penalty. And again, we hasten to add that is not the way the halacha comes out according to the Rambam. If indeed it has to be carried out, it is carried out. But they're just saying this is the way. So they would have asked that question. Are you certain that the individual who was killed was not a treifa? Omer Avashi, and even if in Timsaloi Masholem, getting a bit of feedback here, Peter, if you can put it on. Yeah, good, thank you. Im Timsaloi Masholem, 3 lines up. And if it turns out, yes, they've exactly examined it, as it happens, they know for certain. In those days, but they're saying that they know that this individual is absolutely healthy. A vigorous scanning is taking place, and the person's absolutely. Nevertheless, you can ask the following question: Dilma b'mokum sayif nekev hava, where imagine it was with a spear or a sword or a knife. Where the knife actually entered the body, there was actually, at that point, there was a nekev, he's saying a hole. Have a look at Rashi here. In Timsaloi Masholeh Mahorag, that they did kill, or these people, the murderer killed someone who was healthy. Sheyomru, they will say, Bodak Nuhu La'acha Misosoi. We did actually check after death. They've done a post-mortem. Mikol Shmoina Esrei Treifas, from all the rules of Treifa in any way, as it happened. I'm not saying this is what people should do, but in this case, imagine that this individual, we said post-mortem, I mean, the way he was killed, it was possible to check in every way, and this person was healthy, and not so much healthy, but not a treifa. That's crucial. infirm is not what we're looking for. We're not treifa. You can still ask a question. Did the cherev go into the body at a place where there was a hole? There's no way of telling that, is there? Because you've now got a knife in that hole and you can't tell what was there before. So really, it's another way of asking questions, according to one view, that we're asking questions where the Eidim wouldn't be able to answer. Now, again, according to the halacha, we don't paskin like this. We would follow the rove. Normally, if a person's healthy and a knife goes into the individual, you don't suspect that maybe there was a hole exactly where the knife entered the body, and therefore that wouldn't be good enough. But according to this view, where we're trying to find ways of saying that the Eidim didn't really see everything exactly, that will be the simple interpretation of the Gemara. There are questions you can raise where, again, according to this view, we would not be following to carry out the death penalty. We're not carrying out, going according to the majority. You'd expect the person to be healthy. The Gemara concludes, sorry, this is a bit graphic, I'm afraid, technical and graphic. The Gemara asks the following question 3 lines up. What question to ensure that the Eidim aren't certain about the event are you going to ask, says the Gemara, Baboyel eso erva? If there is a forbidden relationship taking place, what question are you going to ask so that the Eidim can't be certain? Says the Gemara, Hechi hava ovdi, abai v'rova d'omra tabayu. And here we see the Gemara with the Aloshan Sagi Noha, as you'll see. The question they will raise is Re'isem kemikcho b'shoferes. What does that mean? The mikcho b'shoferes are just terms that are being used here. Have a look at Rashi. Re'isem kemikcho, what does that mean? The eino eidim mistaklin bekach. What does it mean? Did the Eidim see absolutely certain that it was, what's a shoferes? That's a kone cholol. It means where you've got a container with a hole. This is used for people who are painting their eyes, a container. So in other words, you've got a container, and the mikchol is a kisam, a bit like a splint, I suppose you'd say, small piece of wood, duck, very narrow. From this container, you are placing this flint, or not really a flint, I suppose a splint is probably better, a piece of wood, that's like a splint, into the container to get out the color for the eye. So obviously, as I say, this is Loshen Sagi Noha, which means it's obviously it's an example where the Gemara is trying to get at the point. Did you see the act taking place like a splint in a container? You're so certain that this relationship took place. And obviously, most cases it will be no, we didn't. So therefore, you say, well, maybe actually the relationship itself did not take place. For Rabbanon, what about the Rabbanon? Heichidaini. So it's a good question, isn't it? How can anybody ever be chayav misa then in this relationship situation? You can't be certain there was a relationship. Kishmuel, the Omar Shmuel, no. But Menafim, again, the general rule is like Menafim are adulterers. In other words, you'd follow what the norm would be. Mishayiro Kemenafim, if you see them in the act, you don't need to check to that type of detail. It will be pretty clear what's going on. And therefore, that would be good enough to make them chayiv misa. And that's the conclusion. We look forward to going back. Beautiful, and also going back to this perek as we conclude the perek. So the conclusion of this perek is we do, and that's the way the Rambam paskins. We are extremely careful about carrying out this death penalty. However, we don't paskin like this last view. The Rambam says if it is necessary, we will have to carry out the death penalty. But as I say, we would do everything we can to try and ensure that it really is not just certain. We don't say the Beis Din will not want to, in general times, be allowing the capital offence and allowing the punishment and the death penalty to be carried out. And the Rambam paskins that actually in 7 years, that would be not cruel, we say destructive type of Beis Din. But the Rambam does say that if it really is necessary and you've got certainty about it, then it should not be something just on the it's on the books, as you say, but never carried out. And to say, as we do finally, that it would never be carried out, that should not be said, because we don't paskin like that. So that is, as I say, the conclusion of this perek. And yeah, we'll have a l'chaim maybe at the end, so we don't get carried away. So we'll leave that for the end. So yes, l'chaim everybody. I'm giving chance to have the wine out. Let's say when we've concluded. Moving on to the next perek, which very much goes into, it's called Eilu Hein Hagoylin. We're now looking much more into accidental death. What is considered accidental death? Malcolm, apologize for not joining. Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Pete passed back a message. We're in absence. I'm sure he can have a l'chaim with us. Thank you very much. And if I can call upon you, please, Peter, let's have a look at the Rambam as an introduction. Perek Vov, Hilchos Rotseach. Oh, yeah, go down to Halacha. Mishnah Torah. Sorry, the top one, the very first. Oh, wow, you're there. Oh, no, you're not. Double click, yes. Now scroll down.
But Norman, can I just ask a small point?
Yes.
Because I lost connection with you. But would, in order to try and prevent the death penalty, so would be best in as a routine to post-mortem on a person?
No, we said before you don't need to do that.
I mean, I couldn't hear that.
Yeah, no, you don't need to do that.
So the commissioner was just asking a theoretical question, perhaps.
Yeah, and then asking a question, if they say no, we're not certain that the person was healthy, and we're just basically trying to get him off the hook and getting them to contradict each other. That's really the way Tosfos concludes. But we do paskin, we go bosarov. You do generally, there is a rule about following the majority of individuals as well. Yeah, do keep scrolling down. Human disposition, no, it's quite late on. Rotseach Perek Vov. So keep going. No, it's a long way to go. Incredible. No, keep going. Zeroim, Avodah. Oh, getting there slowly. Korbonot. Yeah, no, Tahara. Nazika, here we are. Damages, there we are. Murderer and the preservation of life. Down. One more. Down further. Bit more. There it is. Perek 6. Halacha. Well, let's start at the beginning of Perek 6. As we start this Perek, and it's also Perek Shishi. Shlosha heim hahorgim below kavona. So we've very much been looking in the past of mazid cases. With kavona, intentional killers. This perek looks at, and so does our perek of the Gemara, looks at unintentional killers. And we do know there's a rule of golus going into, remember, the cities of refuge. When exactly is that carried out? Now look at halacha number 8. Yesh horeg bishkoga. There's someone who kills unintentionally. V'haloma gumura. Not knowing. Yeah. V'zehu shenema. That's called a full shogeg. Va'ashelo tzodo, which means a person not lying in ambush. A tzod is not in ambush. But we'll see about this as the Gemara will continue, that there is a little bit, he's not totally without guilt, as we'll see. The deny, there is someone, his rule, the rule about such an individual, he goes to the city of refuge, and he therefore not sail. He's actually saved from the death penalty. I'm actually, as we'll see, there's a Goel Adon, not for now. Kamoshe Bianu. Okay. Next halacha, please. That's one category. V'yesh horeg, v'tiyash gogo. Yes, it's unintentional, but korov la'oines. This is, he translates it. Ones means totally out of his control. He's checked the car. He's just been through its MOT. It's a brand new car, and the brakes don't function. It's not his fault. It's the, as I say, and sadly, accident, etc. This is called, that's korov la'oines. It's beyond his control. In fact, it can even be a korov la'oines, close. Obviously, ultimately, when it's totally out of his control, that was the example I gave you. There are other things which are korov la'oines. V'hu sheyera b'misa zeh ma'ora pele she'eno motzu b'rov amoris. It's very unlikely ever going to happen, but it never. This, as he says here, extraordinary phenomenon. He says, okay, and that's what happened here. As I say, that example with a car where it's all been checked, you can't blame. There's no blame. You know, it's a faulty car. It should never have happened. You can't really blame anybody. It's one of those things. V'dino shehu potim min hagolus. Such a person is even exempt from going to golus. Will go into the harogo goel adam. This person is totally, as I say, without any guilt whatsoever. The goel adam can't kill him, but the goel adam will worry about it later on. So that's category number 2. Then you've got the next one. 4, it's unintentional, but it's close to intentional. What does that mean? There's negligence involved. And this negligence is something he should have really allowed for. It's true, it was unintentional. He didn't intend to kill anybody, but there's negligence involved here. He should have been careful about certain things. Now, such an individual, he doesn't go to Golus. His sin, sadly, is more severe, more strict, and ein Golus machapereslo. Therefore, exile is not an atonement for him. They don't act as a city of refuge. They don't act as, I say, refuge. They only, the place of Ori Miklad is only for those people, and it acts as a refuge. And we'll see about this because there is the Goel Adom, the nearest of kin, can, we'll see that later on, kill this individual if he finds him, unless he is, that's the killer, unless his killer is in Ori Miklot, but that's only available for people who've killed B'Shogeg. The Fichach in Matzor Goel Adom, if he called the avenger the Goel Adom of his blood, we'll see about that in Mishnayos. Harogo Potter, he is exempt and he can kill him. So let's have, I think there's nothing more we need for today. If just scroll down one more. Okay, okay. We'll leave that for the minute. Let's go back to our Mishnah as we make a start on the Mishnah. So we've been busy with intentional, particularly we're talking about murder. We're talking about unintentional. And we want some definitions here. Where do you, as we see, there are 3 categories. There's the real shogeg that goes to a city of refuge. There are things which are unintentional, totally out of his control. That's onus. Doesn't need the kapora. And then there are things which are a little bit of sheer. There's a little bit of or more than negligence there. It was unintentional but negligent. Such a person also doesn't go to Golus, but he's not killed because it was not intentional. Okay, says the Mishnah, and we've got examples here, and
What
these
would be an
examples.
example of that?
I'm sorry, Mervyn, what did you say?
No, so you are going. I also
Oh yeah, that's what this Mishnah is going to be about, and from which we will learn.
Sorry.
Let's get some meaning to this, some examples. Says the Mishnah, Elu Hein Hagolim. These are the people who go to Goros, and we'll learn from these rules. Let's learn things in general. Hahoreg nefesh bishkoga. Someone, number one, is killing and it's unintentional, but that's not enough. Hoyo margol b'magila. Nice example here. Margol, it's a margol. Normally, agula is a circle or roller. Actually, you see it, according to Tosfos, it really is a roller. What's happening here? Have a look at Rashi. Hoyo margol b'magila. Tochin hoyu galgoisei betit. They were plastering the roof. They were flat roof. I'm getting again, Peter, some feed. Yeah, it's all right. If people go on mute and then I'll come off if you want. Okay, very good. Right. The roof was flat. Now that's no good when it rains. So what people would do, it was built as a flat surface. Avo hatit, the plaster, mishapi'in ma'at. When they're plastering the roof, they ensured there was a slight gradient. Kadesha yozuvu hamayim, says Rashi, so that the water would come off, flow off. Now, what would they do, therefore, when they put on this the plaster? Tochin oisoi bachatichas eitz ovo. Now, Rashi seems to sound like there's got a flat piece of wood for chilka, and they would smooth out the plaster at an angle, slight angle, so that the water would then flow off. Ubor beis yad, and there's a handle to this this item, this piece of wood. They'd be pushing the person standing on the top of the roof, and he'd be pushing down at doichev, to push towards the gradient, making a slight incline. After that, he would draw it back to himself. This is an example. Obviously, from there we'll move on. And then push it once again, and therefore all this plaster mismareach, it would become smooth or machlif. So you've got a smooth roof, but at an incline. When you're pushing it, korehu margol, that's called, the verb used for that is margol. Ubimshi choso, when you're drawing that contraption back to yourself, korehu moishech, you're pulling it. V'shemu eitz, the name of this piece of wood is a margila. An example. Actually, if you look at Tosfos, Tosfos says he's actually more circular. Look at or it's round. Look at so slight difference to Rashi. B'meim, in their days, Jehoyu agagim shovim, the roof was flat. Below hoyu mishupoim, it was not at an incline. Kamo shalonu, as ours are, says Tosfos. They would plaster it. They want to ensure that it's a smooth shaveh. Look, Tosfos says slightly differently to Rashi. V'loichin even agula. A stone, a round stone, right? Arucha long. He said arucha ktsas, not too long, because you've got to actually, you can imagine like a roller, I suppose you'd call this. V'yesh base shinayim aruchim. It's got like two teeth. Maglim oisai al pnei agag. It's basically, we'd call this a roller, a small roller. And you'd be rolling it. That's the word. That's very nice. Where you got agula is round, ogul, round, circular, and you're rolling this on the roof. Lahashvois v'hainu magila. That's why it's called a magila. Okay, this is an example. Let's see.
The only difference between choices of Russian.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
The only difference between Russian.
We can't hear you. I'm trying to lip read. Are you trying to say whether it's round? Yeah, it just the where was it round or was it just a flat piece of wood according to Rashi? It doesn't matter, but it's just we're using this as an example in our say the case study. So what was he doing? He was rolling. Let's say according to Tosfos, very nice. It's a roller. You can imagine it's at the top of the roof. Trying to be careful, but obviously not careful enough. That's the point. V'noflo, so he's malgul b'magilo. He's pushing it down the roller or the piece of wood. V'noflo olov, it fell out of his hand, and then v'harogatu. Oh, nice verb there. From horag. Horgo, oh so. If you put that together, horagatu. Yeah, sounds like some complaint or something. But he basically it killed him. He didn't kill him, it did, but of course he was the one who let go. That's number one. Another example. Hoya mashalshel b'chovis. He's lowering. A chovis is a barrel, okay, on a string. He's lowering it. V'nofla olov, again, it fell on him. Let go, fell on him. Sadly, there's a man walking underneath. They're all, okay, presumably he'd put up notices, but we'll see what happened in a minute. Again, mahoragatu, and it, this barrel, killed the individual. He's going down a ladder and fell off the ladder. V'nofal olov baharogoi, and killed him. Hare ze goyle. In all those examples, that is the middle of the line type of shogeg, unintentional. We've got to make sure it's not, is it closer to an intentional or closer to totally out of his control? The Mishnah is saying this is bang in the middle, and this is the example that would go obviously, these are three examples. From there, we would follow these examples through. Have a look at Rashi. Hoya mashal shel chovius minagag. He's lowering, nice word, l'shal shel chovius, l'shal shel. Double-barreled root there. Shal shel chovis, lowering the barrel from the roof. Or the last example, hoyo yoreid, who was going down? The person who died? No, says Rashi, ha-horeid, the person who ultimately kills the other individual is ha-horeid. So again, hoyo yoreid, ha-horeid, b'sulam. Rashi puts it all together. He was going down a ladder. V'nofal min hasulam, he fell off the ladder. V'horag b'gufoi es chaveroi, and then he actually landed sadly, soft landing for him, on this individual and killed him. Says Rashi, Gola, In those three examples and anything similar, he would go to Golus. D'chol hani derech yuridon into. This is very important. They're all going down. The Gabi Golus, when we found Psukim describing going into exile or going into the cities of refuge, it's always a derech yurida. That's normally the way that it would be an accident, unintentional, and going to Golus. Could a mafarish big Gemara? The Gemara is going to bring a posuk. If we get there, we'll ask Peter to look at that posuk for us. Vayapel olov, causing it to go down. We'll see that's a typical definition of a shogeg. Now, why three examples like this? Have a look at the last Tosfos on the page. Hoyoyored besulam. Yesh omrim, there's those that say, the Tana of this Mishnah, lo zu afzu katoni, is using the principle not only this, but this. That's lo zu afzu. What does that mean? Lo zu margol, not someone who's with dropping the roller. Devada yesh lechayvo golus. Yes, he goes to Golus. Why? You can't say it's a total accident out of his control. Deloma lo nisa. He could have been more careful. There must have been a way of being more careful. Why was he not more careful? Yes, it was unintentional. He goes to Golus. Ela af mishal shel chovius. Someone who's lowering a barrel. Deshaper mizah, last line of Tosfos, such an individual will be more careful. Shelo yishaber chavisoi. He doesn't want to lose his barrel of wine, very expensive wine. So such an individual you would have expected will be more careful. Even so, he could have been more careful. Again, im nofal v'horag chayev. V'od furthermore, delozu elo afzu, even this case also goes to Golus. We are moving more away. You'd think these examples are more towards the onus category. And this Mishnah is saying, no, they're not. What's the last one of Tosfos? What about Sulam on a ladder? The Tfei mizdaher. Person's much more. Tfei is more. A person is more careful. They're risking their own life. Kadei shelo yipol. Im horag chayev, each such an individual is still chayev, and we don't say that's an onus because clearly he didn't want to harm himself. No, a person needs to be more careful, not just for themselves, but for anybody else who may be passing. All those examples are considered a in the middle of the line, a straight shogeg. However, says the Mishnah, he's drawing it up to himself. And then it slips out of his hand. And it kills the individual. He's pulling up a barrel. And imagine there the string broke. And then it fell and killed. As we turn the page, gentlemen, just as well, Peter, you sent the Zainam base. Thank you. He was going up a ladder. And he falls off as he's going up. Such an individual doesn't go to Golus, and you can understand why. That's a person takes much more care when they're going up to make sure that, yeah. So clearly the person would have taken more care, and this is moving towards the onus. It's not something totally out of his control, but what we've said here, this is intentional, moving away from intentional, moving towards the onus category, and therefore such an individual doesn't go to Golus. This is the general rule, and why we need examples plus a general rule, the Gemara will pick up. You would have thought you don't need a general rule, or just have the general rule, don't have anything else. The Gemara will pick that up. Zeh haklal, this is the general rule. Kol shebederech yiridosai, if it's on the way down, goyle, such an individual goes to golus. V'shelo bederech yiridosai, but if it's not, if it's on the way up, that's moving away towards more the onus category and Eino Goyla, and we'll see hopefully next time when we look at the psukim to see where we get this principle from. Why is going down? We're considering that closer to negligent. There's more negligence if a person falls off the ladder going down than if he's going up. As we'll see in some of these psukim, but we're getting the general point here about these categories, and that's how the Gemara will move on. There's lots of wonderful examples. So if it's going down and going up, what about the ultimate? I suppose you'd have a butcher who may be lifting up to be able to bring it down. Is that going down or going up? There's lots of wonderful cases, or somebody's lifting up and then it goes around the back of him. Right, so somebody's lifting up. Imagine a butcher lift, and it goes that's going down at the back. Is that considered negligent? Is it negligent, golus or not? But the main principle here, you can see from all of this in this whole perek, is a person needs to consider other people and other individuals. That's really what we're looking at. We want the person to concern themselves with other people and don't. Who's at the center? A person should try and push themselves away from the center. Of course, you want Hashem in the center, but a person pushing them away themselves, being, self-centered, exactly that, but concerned and worried and anxious about other people. Take care that no harm should befall anybody. And that's really what this whole perek's going to be about. Yeah, sorry.
If somebody's up a ladder now, we always have another helper at the bottom.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. He's up a ladder. He's what?
Yeah, they always have somebody at the bottom to redirect pedestrians. They don't
Actually, you're right. It's teaching all these things. You're right. If the person has taken every precaution and then still falls off, then you're right. That will be an onus. And we want, if anything, to be always in that category of if something untoward happens, it's really the person there's no blame whatsoever on the individual, and that's really when a person does anything, they should always be concerned, what the repercussions are with everything they do. And this is really what the teachings we're learning from all of this. And it's not just actions; it's words as well. Person needs to think twice before they say anything, because as we know, with the words you can't take the words back, and so a person needs to take that care. So with that, gentlemen, we'll call on Peter first to sing together with everybody else, and then we'll have our glass of wine. So let's just say Shiur Malas first, if we can, Peter. So chapter 121. Are we ready for that?
I forgot to share the screen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Here we are. Shiur Malos. Oretz al yitain lamod raglecho al yonon shomerechom hine lo yonon v'lo yishon shomer Yisroel Adonai shomerechom Adonai zilcho al yad Yomum Hashemesh lo yakeku v'yoreach v'laylo Adonai yishmerecho mikol ra yishmo es nafshecho
Adonai yishmor zeische uvoecho, me'ato v'yad olam.